Well, it turns out the U.S. Postal Service was developing a system that would allow you to vote on your cell phone before the 2020 election. A recent article in the Washington Post revealed this project happened without the knowledge of other government agencies. But the Postal Service scrapped it in 2019 after finding several cybersecurity issues. So Jacob Bogage co-wrote that piece. He is a business reporter who also covers the U.S. Postal Service for the Washington Post. This is really fascinating because this is a conversation that pops up all the time about how we should be making it easier for people to vote instead of harder for people to vote. You know, other countries make it a national holiday, so you don't have to worry about taking time off work, and they do all sorts of things to make it easier. Certainly, if you could vote on your cell phone, I imagine that the participation rate would sort of skyrocket. But there are problems. So we will start with this. We'll start with the easy question. How did the system work? And here's the really easy part. For people who don't understand what blockchain technology is, because that's what it was based on, can you explain blockchain technology?
Sure, absolutely. So how would the system work? You would get a piece of mail sent to you like you would an absentee ballot. And instead of filling out a ballot in the mail, it would have a little code or a QR code or something you would scan on your phone, and that would take you to your secure ballot. That ballot was secured through what's called blockchain, which is a way of securely encrypting different pieces of information and transparently tracing the last folks who held that information. So you have a secure block and chain of data. There are some real advantages to a system like this, namely giving folks different methods of ways to cast their ballot and being able to do it from the comfort of their own home. It's the same reason why so many people liked voting by mail in the 2020 election. The downside is there are tremendous cybersecurity risks, and the blockchain for these kind of activities is nowhere near as safe as a lot of folks think it should be. Election experts think it should be. To handle our elections, which are the lifeblood of our democracy.
So when and why did the Postal Service start developing this?
The Postal Service, I mean, years before the 2020 election, I mean, we're talking the early 2010s, had talked with some voting experts about finding new and innovative ways to allow folks to vote from home. And that's because we're all sending less mail and we're all doing a lot less by paper, and the Postal Service kind of saw the writing on the wall and wanted to get out in front of that. This blockchain project doesn't really start coming on board until 2018, 2019, and then from our reporting, it's clear it really didn't get that far. I mean, the Postal Service did not engage with federal cybersecurity experts on projects like this. They didn't engage with many local voting elections administrators on something like this. The furthest it got was building this prototype model and then testing it. And as we reported, the test didn't go very well. I mean, the researchers who stress test this thing, and they didn't even have the full capability to do it. I mean, this was like a 50% stress test, found it would be so much easier to impersonate voters, to infect voters' phones, to disrupt the tabulation of votes through blockchain than it would be otherwise. And again, the watchword of the day when it comes to election security is having a paper trail, literal physical pieces of paper that you can track down and trace to every single vote that's cast. And a system like this could provide that. But again, when you have technology acting as a middleman, it causes some concern.
You know, you never know. Maybe it would have went better if they had actually included some of the cybersecurity experts that we already have working for the government. You talked to a former official who was with U.S. Cybersecurity, the U.S. Cybersecurity Agency, CISA, and when the Postal Service was developing the voting system, that person didn't know anything about it. What was his reaction?
Didn't know anything about it, and his reaction was alarmed that another federal agency would pursue a program that runs counter to everything CISA, the federal cybersecurity gatekeepers, shall we say, that they were preaching at the time. And they weren't just preaching it to put it out in the world. I mean, these were best practices for keeping Americans and our institutions safe. And the Postal Service kind of explored this on their own without engaging with CISA or really with any federal cybersecurity experts on if this was a good idea, if it was achievable, and what the long-term repercussions would be.
So you also reported that this type of system is more vulnerable to hacking. I don't know. When I read that, I felt like I'm not surprised, but then I also thought, well, I kind of am surprised.
Yeah, because we've been told over and over again that blockchain technology was so secure,
Yes.
right? Like that's what all these cyber currency or these, Bitcoin and these other currencies are built on,
Right.
Because it's traceable. And if
That's
you
right.
need it to trace something, it's not a paper trail, but it's traceable. So then why were these chains so weak? Where were the weak links, to extend the metaphor?
So when we're talking about security in the blockchain, there is, of course, the actual data that is stored in the blockchain, and then there's the way users interact with that data. Think about the way somebody would be casting a ballot this way, right? It would be at home, on their cell phone. They'd be getting a piece of something through the mail. They'd have to fill it out. I mean, you're talking about engaging with users in a way that is outside of that blockchain, right? Is the entry into that blockchain. So is there a way to infect people's phones? Yeah, absolutely there is. Is there a way to corrupt a mobile application? Yeah, there absolutely is. Hacking is not just revealing people's data or messing with the system and altering results. What if we flooded this system with results? What if we sent too much data to this system and broke it down? Well, then we can't count votes. Then a lot of the discrete pieces of data that we rely on for the blockchain would fail. That's what these cybersecurity researchers found in their stress tests. It's not just about the security of the data when it's already in the blockchain. It's about entering the blockchain and exiting the blockchain. Those are two very vulnerable areas.
Sorry. So obviously there are some obvious benefits. What benefits would a system like this have? I guess the primary one would be participation. And was that the main reason that it was being pursued?
So there's two main areas when we talk about benefits. The first is participation overall. The 2020 election, when a lot of people couldn't go to the polls or didn't feel safe going to the polls, we still saw historic participation, and election experts chalk that up to multiple methods of being able to vote. Just you could vote in person, you could vote at home absentee, you could vote early, you could drop your ballot off in person, you could drop your ballot off in a drop box, you could mail it back in. All of those methods meet voters where they are. And that's great for participation as a whole. But we also talk about reaching voters that are harder to reach. Folks with disabilities, folks who live overseas, military voters. These are people that maybe they don't want to rely on the mail. Maybe they can't make it to a polling place themselves. Maybe they have difficulties with motor skills and manipulating a paper ballot. This would be a way potentially to reach those folks.
Really fascinating. Jacob Bogage, thank you very much. Incredible reporting.
Thanks for having me.